Story 1. He kept making jokes at my expense. They were not major, but his attitude leaned the wrong way from day one. Story 2. She normalized her friends cheating but claimed she never would. I never really trusted her. Story 3. We are divorced now, but my wife gradually developed an opioid addiction that became a full-blown fentanyl addiction, and I ignored all the warning signs because I did not want to believe it. Story 4. She lied and cheated, sneaking around and making up stories that were later proven false. I did my best for 14 years, but I deserve better, and now I'm demanding it. I left her. Story 5. He gave me yeast infections nonstop. Later I found out it was because he had poor hygiene. Story 6. She never fought with me. Not once. She worked as a salesperson and needed everyone to like her. She agreed with everything I said, and I thought we were very alike. It was my first healthy adult relationship, so I thought no fighting was great. She broke up with me out of the blue when we lived together and said it was because we had all these differences I had no idea about. The lack of arguments and constant agreeableness was a fake personality meant to make me love her. She could not keep up the act and eventually snapped. You should not be arguing all the time, but having absolutely zero arguments or even small disagreements for 2 years is a red flag. Story 7. Their constant need for control felt protective, but it was suffocating. Story 8. They are lying and downplaying it, which invalidates my emotions. Story 9. I ignored the constant lying because I was blinded by how much I cared. Story 10. She had cheated before, but this relationship is different. Story 11. He was selfish in bed and in every other aspect. Story 12. I never heard his voice during the 6 months we dated. I was a complete idiot. Story 13. I was being used. I was kept just close enough to help, driving places, paying for things, doing tasks. I thought helping was how I showed love and that they were receiving it. No, they were simply receiving the convenience of someone loving them. Story 14. When someone constantly talks badly about all their exes, calling each one crazy or toxic, it often turns out there is one common denominator. Story 15. 2 different people had the same problem. They both insisted they were always right and could never accept being wrong. They also refused to apologize for anything. Story 16. She isolated me from my friends and family. I did not deliberately ignore it. I did not even realize she was doing it. There were constant accusations of cheating. If I liked a female friend's photo on Facebook, I was accused. And if I laughed at a female stand-up comedian's joke, she would yell that if I loved her so much, I should marry her. I wish I had left then, before the daily beatings and the time she almost killed me. Story 17. They did not communicate and brushed things off instead of talking things through. I ignored it because I was in love. Story 18. Emotional avoidance. She told me she loved spending time with me and talking to me. But if I asked about her intentions, she would say, just live in the moment. And what really matters are the great feelings we have when we're together. She love-bombed me at first, and after a few months of seeing her 2 to 3 times a week, she stopped reaching out as much and said she didn't want me to get tired of her. I get blinders when I fall for someone and have no desire to pursue anyone else. And once they know that, they start breadcrumbing to keep me thinking there is a chance, but they never follow through. When I told her I didn't want to continue seeing her, she said I was missing all the great advice and help she gives me. But she can never commit to saying she wants to take things to the next level. She says she won't give up on me, but she never believed in me in the first place. I felt like just another person on the carousel, yet she says I'm the top choice. I feel like such an idiot. She has many other amazing qualities, and she says she has no expectations. It's been over 8 months now, and it's the same story every time I ask about her feelings. I ask because I want to learn how to be better for her every day. She says she loves hearing that, and it makes her happy, but she can't say she loves me. She will just send a heart in a text. And if we're intimate and I tell her I love her, she just grins and says nothing. I don't understand why she wants me to keep pursuing her and talking to her several times a day if she isn't interested in taking a chance on a commitment, like taking a vacation together and spending at least 2 or 3 days to see if she'd be okay with having me around for more than 5 or 6 hours at a time. I wish she would just roast me and tell me how disgusting she thinks I am. Story 19. He ignored me and had sex with me without a condom after I told him 5 times that I wanted to use one because I was having medical issues. Story 20. Habitual little white lies I thought were harmless eventually turned into very big, dangerous ones. Story 21. He had a porn addiction. One day we were texting. He asked me to choose between 2 options, ask Siri heads or tails, and sent me a screenshot of the response. In the corner of the screenshot, he was actively watching porn while texting me. It made me nauseous, but I decided to ignore it. The thing about a man with a porn addiction is that his standards for sex align with what he watches on film. He always wanted sex and would get visibly upset with me when I refused. The week we broke up, he spent the night and we cuddled. When he wanted sex, he started dry humping me like a dog humping my leg. It disgusted me. Story 22. One red flag I ignored was how easily he belittled my friends without knowing them. I did not realize at the time that the way someone treats your friends is how they will eventually treat you. Story 23. His gaming addiction was worse than I realized. When a family member died, he did not get up from his game to comfort me. He did not even look away from the screen when I walked in. He just said, "Sorry, babe," and kept playing. Story 24. I was not allowed to have meltdowns around him. I am autistic, and he said my meltdowns would make his anxiety worse or cause him to have one too. He was autistic as well and insisted his autism was worse than mine, so if I wanted to be a good girlfriend, I should avoid triggering him. My migraines decreased dramatically after I ended the relationship. Story 25. Do not believe intentions instead of facts. If someone is unsure about a future, assume they do not want it and leave. Do not give them the benefit of the doubt or make excuses. Leaving will give them the clarity they need. Story 26. Not the biggest but the earliest. It was very early in the relationship, and we had traveled to a carnival in a random city. At about 1 a.m., we were standing on a street corner deciding what to do because the club we wanted to enter had the world's longest queue. We spoke with a girl, and it turned out her uncle was a disc jockey at the club and she could get us very important person entry. We went with her to the club. My partner went in first, then his friend, but the bouncer stopped me. It turned out she had only said the men could get very important person entry and not me. My partner turned around and shouted for me to join the queue and said they would meet me inside. The queue was well over an hour long, so I was hurt that he did not come back and wait with me. That would have been the kind thing to do. It was clear he was not going to, so his friend came out and waited with me. His excuse was that it would cost him money if he queued. Other red flags included narcissism, shouting, anger issues, and then he started pushing me during arguments and hitting me with objects, followed by love bombing after he had been terrible. Occasionally I would get an apology, but it was always followed by blaming me, so a sorry that was not sincere. Story 27. Trickle truths and the normalization of friends' gross and strange behaviors make it inevitable that, even if you do not want to, you will become like the people you surround yourself with. Story 28. He never had anything good to say about me. He was always the first to point out my mistakes and the last to acknowledge my good qualities. If I tried to point out something he did that was wrong or that I did not like, he would say that I must be such a great person to have noticed that and that he would never have done it. That affected me deeply. Story 29. She had a constant need for male validation. At first I thought she was very extroverted and liked to talk to everyone. But when I paid closer attention, I realized it wasn't just casual friendly conversation but flirting. When I brought it up, she pretended not to know what I meant but stopped. She still cheated on me. That was a big bullet I dodged. Story 30. He lived in the moment. After 6 years, the wrong time came and he decided to leave. Never again. Story 31. The relationship was plagued by extreme insecurity. I thought jealousy was adorable at first, and she wanted to know the full extent of my dating history and whether I had been involved with any of my friends. She invaded my privacy by going through my phone and social media and repeatedly accused me of cheating even though I never did. She cheated on me with her ex because she believed I was cheating. When I tried to break up, she tried to stab me with a kitchen knife because she wanted to know who I was seeing. I was young and naive and could not take it anymore. I am grateful I got out before she could kill me. Story 32. She repeatedly breaks up with me instead of talking things through, expects me to fight for her, and then gets back together. Story 33. He defecated in my yard in multiple spots in the middle of my family's 4th of July barbecue. Story 34. This is a good, valid question. When you ask something, you sometimes get responses such as, I was afraid that if I had told you earlier, you would become angry. If you knew I would become angry, why would you do it in the first place? Story 35. People-pleasing and conflict avoidance. I thought avoiding conflict hurt the other person more, but it turns out it destroys relationships. You cannot be truly present in a relationship if you do not show up for yourself and simply expect your partner to read your mind. Story 36. He admitted to a porn addiction and said he felt awful for going to swingers clubs and paying for sex in his past, which was not that long ago. He admitted he was lazy and said he would change. Spoiler, he did not. He had to be told to do everything, when to wash, to clean his teeth, and he would not make baby bottles. He is still the same. I still have to tell him how to look after his children, how to have self-respect and respect for others, to shower regularly and to wash his clothes. I have to beg him for child support. He cannot understand why his children are getting fed up with him and do not want to visit. Story 37. They were always saying they were not ready for a relationship but doing all the things people in relationships do. They told me repeatedly that once they were ready they would make it official. I came to my senses and left. Story 38. Her family members told me to be careful around her. Story 39. Chatting with your ex and with a so-called friend you met the day before at 4 in the morning. In my country, if you know someone for a day, you are not friends. I should have walked away from that relationship months ago. Story 40. We used to work in the same place, but whenever the boss had a conflict with a staff member, my ex would disappear and hide in the restroom. He was avoidant in the relationship and I let it slide. He also avoided introducing me to his parents for 2 years, even though I had introduced him to mine after 6 months. I told myself it was because he was one of many siblings and not close to them, but in reality he was close to his parents. Don't ignore signs of an avoidant personality. I wish I could prevent negative things from happening, but life does not work that way, so you learn how to deal with them. Story 41. Ignoring all the I'm fine texts that clearly meant, I'm not fine and you're about to get dragged into this. Love makes us blind to red flags until they're waving in our face like a parade. Story 42. He did not let me sleep when he was upset. We had talked about that topic for hours. I work nights and I need sleep too. He was always upset about something. Story 43. He was cheating. Deep down I knew it, but I wasn't ready to face it. Story 44. Money management. I didn't realize how much of a strain it would be because of our opposing value systems. Story 45. My fiancé was a drug addict. At first I was naive and didn't realize how awful and traumatizing it would be. I lost a lot of myself in that relationship. I was aware of what was going on but ignored it until it consumed me. When something feels off, it usually is. Trust your gut. Story 46. He had an incredibly close relationship with his mother. He let her stay at his house for 8 weeks straight. She was still on his checking account. He could not make a decision without consulting her. He would rub her feet when they were together. As if all this were not bad enough, she frequently kissed him on the lips. He was 31 years old. Story 47. Whenever I was excited to do something, he would have an outburst beforehand that put the evening on the wrong foot and then act miserable for the rest of the night. I learned to stop asking to go out, and when I did ask, it came with intense anxiety and constant checking to see if he was agitated about being out. Story 48. After 3 weeks of dating, he began to make me feel uneasy whenever I wanted to visit my parents overnight. Story 49. This one was more subtle and not immediately obvious, but in hindsight it was a red flag. After meeting her on a camping trip with others, she was already head over heels for me. I was creeped out by the intensity of her feelings, and later I realized those feelings went both ways. She could be both loving and spiteful. She would love you obsessively one moment and act as if you did not exist the next. Story 50. He believed the people on the radio were talking to him and suffered from crippling anxiety, but he refused to get professional help or remain on medication. It is sad because I cannot say it was all his fault. Schizophrenia is devastating. It is also sad because I stayed for approximately 2 years after it became apparent this would be a massive problem. Story 51. She did not acknowledge my love language. I did everything for her. I may not have taken her on many dates, but I was generous and always asked if she wanted anything wherever I went. I brought her food to work, cooked dinner after her late shifts, and took responsibility for the chores at home. I accompanied her on her adventures, but she never wanted to join my hobbies or spend time with my friends. Then she cheated because she said she was unhappy. Nearly 4 years of marriage felt wasted. Story 52. He would leave in the middle of the night to go for a drive. If I mentioned it, he said I was being controlling and paranoid. Story 53. She was cheating on her boyfriend to be with me, yet she said she would never cheat on me. Story 54. He had no friends and talked about people and events from years ago as if they had just happened. Story 55. When he told his family, who did not like me because of my race, and his friends about my reactions to his terrible treatment, he left out what he had done to me. He punished me with silence and distance when I brought up issues, and punished me more when I said I felt punished. He used derogatory slurs about my clothing, how I dressed before and during our relationship, and how I presented myself on the dating app where we met. He would say things like, "My mother would not like you wearing those heels. I think you should switch them. Or that dress shows your whole back. You look like a hooker. That is okay to wear to the pool but not on a date." I spent $400 on new clothes so he would take me out on dates because he had stopped and would practically run away from me in public. This treatment did not begin until after I fell in love with him. He also told me weekly that his father wanted to set him up with his coworkers' daughters to get him away from the black single mom. I should have left, but I held out hope that someone in that family would come around. The only person who liked me was his 3-year-old nephew. I became his favorite person. Story 56. Humiliated in public at a family function 1 week after my engagement. Story 57. It was a tie between her alcoholism and her estranged husband. Story 58. She made out with a man she had been involved with years before we met because there was a spark between them, although they had never been together. The spark led them to make out in front of me while she was drunk. After the kiss, she said she realized I was the one she wanted to be with, that she felt nothing for the other man, and that she did not regret kissing him. We got together soon after, but we broke up after years of roller coaster highs and lows caused by various issues. Story 59. He is ignorant when it is his fault. His pride was larger than his penis and he was laughing. Story 60. He has an extensive criminal record. In his own words, he is a felon, an addict, married, and a slut. He is a member of a local biker gang, twice my age and not interested in commitment. He is twice my age, not very smart, and does not believe in wearing motorcycle helmets or in vaccines. Story 61. I experienced narcissism and didn't know what it was or how it shows up in a relationship. The red flags were all there. Zero accountability, gaslighting for his amusement, empty promises, being made to feel like it was my fault when he behaved badly, and repeatedly trampling my boundaries. Story 62. He was stingy and selfish. Those were the red flags that wore on the relationship over time. Story 63. When you are screaming, you are losing the argument. If I am in an argument with someone, I would rather the other person be screaming than me. Whoever is screaming has lost control emotionally. I do not trust screamers. People with a legitimate grievance generally speak calmly. They believe that if you listen to their concerns, you will understand their position. Story 64. He was screaming and cursing at his mother on the other side of the house, then came into the room with a smile, acting as if he had not just lost control with the woman who raised him. I confronted him firmly about it, but I should have allowed it to upset me much more. Story 65. Borderline personality disorder. We have a child now. Our relationship is still passionate. Story 66. His lack of commitment, his desire to start a family with me, and his status as a functional alcoholic were concerns. Story 67. Dishonesty and refusal to talk to me about things. Story 68. She would say I did not say that when she clearly did. I called her out on it, and then she found other ways to manipulate me into exhaustion. Story 69. I was always the one apologizing, even when I wasn't wrong. Story 70. He was shifty and absent from the beginning. His lack of care and presence persisted throughout the 3 years I knew him. It's hard to believe I was so foolish. Story 71. My ex-husband messaged me randomly a few months earlier while he was with his ex-fiancée, saying things like "you are the one that time forgot" and that he wanted to see me. I did not play into it and responded laughing out loud. We had been friends for years. About 6 months after he and his fiancée broke up, we got together. 9 years later, he cheated on me with a coworker, and I saw similar messages on his phone. In my defense, I was 21 when we started going out. I learned a lot from that. Story 72. He could never pay his rent, but he was always available for any gig, anywhere, at any time, whether paid or unpaid. Story 73. She told me every boyfriend of hers had broken up with her, but I ignored it and later understood why. Story 74. I was 21 and he was 36. He gave me a curfew when I went out for a birthday dinner with my friends. When I came home half an hour after curfew, it was midnight and my birthday. He said, "You are late," and then went back to bed. Why the fuck did I stay? Story 75. He wanted us to get back together after a year apart following our painful breakup, on the condition that he could still sleep with his best friend. I forgave him because I was blindly in love, and he identified as polyamorous. He told me he loved me but was also in love with her, yet he paid me no attention and abandoned plans with me to be with her. In short, it was the biggest consensual betrayal I have ever experienced. Story 76. I found a folder on my ex's computer with countless nude photos of his past girlfriends and flings, dating back to his high school girlfriend, who he was on and off with for years. I recognized her because we all went to the same high school. So yes, he had child pornography. I confronted him about it and he said he kept them to remember the times he had with each of them. I was absolutely disgusted by his response. He said he would delete it, but I never believed him and decided to trust him without checking his computer. I stayed with him for another 6 months because I was so love-blinded. I cannot even answer why. Meeting my amazing husband snapped me back into reality, and I was finally able to leave him after a year of dating. All I was left with was years of trauma and therapy. Fuck that guy. Story 77. Men who loudly proclaim they never use protection are motivated more by lust than by love, I suppose. Laughing out loud. Story 78. If she does not introduce you to her parents after the first year, it is still not going to happen 5 years later. Move on and find a girl who is not embarrassed by your tax bracket. Story 79. He described a sexual assault or digital rape that he said happened because he was addicted to pornography and felt miserable about it. Story 80. My former partner worked for my father. I believed them enough to think it was something more. What an infatuated idiot I was. Story 81. They cut their ex-girlfriend with a knife because she wanted it. They put cigarettes out on her. Alarm bells rang, but I silenced them. What a bellend, gullible wanker I was. Story 82. She never wanted to discuss my problems and made me feel like I was being a bitch for wanting to know where she was or for being upset that she lied to me about having sex with someone else. She would go days without texting, saying she was busy when she was actually with other people she cared about more. Story 83. I cheated repeatedly. I am older and wiser now. I cringe when I look back. Story 84. When they kept making me feel guilty for hanging with friends, I brushed it off because I was in love. Story 85. The biggest red flag is the secret online gambling habit I have just learned the severity of. Story 86. We had a great relationship for months, but he repeatedly got very drunk and called me a bitch. It became a pattern. The relationship was good only when he did not drink. Story 87. I considered myself a fairly analytical and self-aware person, but my ex-wife had me completely fooled. I blame love goggles and a messed up childhood. There were a few red flags throughout our relationship: disrespect, competitiveness, hyperindependence, and a general attitude of superiority. I did not want to be any of those things or to dominate the relationship. I wanted an equal partnership and hoped she cared for me as much as I cared for her. She cared for herself more than she cared for me. I bottled up a lot and brushed many things off my shoulder to make the relationship work. By the end, there was not much of me left. I had one friend I saw maybe once every 6 months and no hobbies. I just worked for her, the house, and the children. Last April, I discovered she had been cheating on me after 21 years together. I did a lot of work with therapists afterward to understand what happened and what led to it. It turned out she showed all the signs of narcissistic personality disorder, malignant subtype. I knew my mother had narcissistic personality disorder, vulnerable victim subtype, so my therapist said I was likely conditioned into believing that behavior was normal with women. It is not. I attributed many of the red flags I noticed to other causes because she told me they were due to diagnosed depression, oppositional defiant behavior, feminism, or hyperindependence, and I believed her. It felt like waking from one bad nightmare and entering another, like awakening from the Matrix. Another red flag was her mother, who never sincerely liked me but pretended to on the surface. She was incredibly superficial. Deep down I knew she did not like me, and I was always cautious around her because, as my therapist said, I did not feel safe with her. One of her persistent complaints was that I did not say hello when she came over uninvited. She fully supported her daughter's actions in the affair and was probably ecstatic that we were separating. After a blowout fight last November, when she came an inch from my face after I told her to stop interfering with how I parent my children, I had to think back to where that hostility originated. My first impression was that my wife would not tell her mother we were dating at first because she feared her reaction. When she did tell her mother, several other mothers of children we went to school with organized an intervention and tried to scare me away from her daughter. It did not work because the other mothers liked me and knew I had honorable intentions. I had a messed up, controlling mother, so again I thought that behavior was normal. I also grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, so I tried to hide the fact that I was dating women who were not Jehovah's Witnesses from my mother. It is not normal to hide that from your parents. That was a huge red flag. As I said, after 23 years, my former mother-in-law still hates me. Despite having 3 children and her daughter being married for 11 years without apparent problems, apart from the abuse I experienced, she seemed ecstatic about our breakup after the affair. Story 88. Severe jealousy. Extreme love bombing. Monitoring my phone and my computer. Age gap of 10 years. Survivor of criminal domestic violence and rape. Story 89. Lying and cheating his best friend and his mother. Borrowing money from his family. Gambling and stealing from Peter to pay Paul. Story 90. All of those micro-cheating incidents were meant to serve as warnings. Story 91. She went to Yosemite with her college crush after his trial without telling me. They are married now. He was found guilty. Story 92. We were kissing on the escalator and did not notice we had reached the bottom. We almost fell. It was a bit dangerous. Story 93. We did not date, but I liked him. He was older than me and asked me to draw him in a Nazi uniform. I was good at realistic drawing, so I agreed. I was young and did not care about the implications. He later turned out to be a pedophile after he turned 18. Story 94. Lack of commitment and uncertainty. We are young, so it is understandable, I guess. Imishia. Laughing out loud. Story 95. She said that cheating doesn't always mean the end of a relationship. I disagreed and didn't think about it until years later when she cheated on me with the man I was told I shouldn't worry about. Story 96. She lived halfway around the world. That was not a personal red flag. She was great, but long-distance relationships are difficult. Story 97. Gambling and marijuana addictions were considered casual when we first got together. Then the cheating was discovered. Addiction is rarely just one thing, and the need for a thrill is always there. Story 98. All her exes were crazy. She was always fighting with someone and burned many bridges. She talked poorly about people behind their backs. Story 99. He had no sense of identity. He could not truly be alone. I learned that he was always spending time with other people, triangulating people who did not even know each other with his complaints and victim complex, and appropriating their hobbies, including mine. There was digital evidence that many people tolerated his company rather than actively included him. It felt strange to realize I was not the only one who was confused. He did not even know it. Story 100. The way he spoke to me was shocking. He would say things I could never imagine saying to anyone else, much less to someone I claimed to love. I always told him he needed to speak more kindly and be more considerate, to treat it as a skill to develop rather than a character flaw. I was wrong. Story 101. She stayed out all night, did not answer her phone, and had a cocaine habit and alcoholism. I was blind. Story 102. I have mental health problems. I thought I could fix her, but now I have them to some degree too. Story 103. I was not romantically in love, but still. We were at the bowling alley, and during that time I did not feel well at all. I saw stains almost every time I stood up. It was my turn. I had to drink water before getting up. So I told Olivia that I had had medical issues for a while and needed 2 minutes. She just smiled and said, "Go ahead." I had to stand up, breathless, watching colors move so she would be happy. About a week later, I was hospitalized in the intensive care unit for extreme anemia that left me close to death. Guess who could not accept my refusal when I said I did not want to listen to her favorite singer's new album, and who told her grandmother that I wanted to change schools so she would talk to my mother and convince her to keep me there, even though I had no friends except her? Story 104. I was asked to make huge sacrifices for the relationship and to do things they knew made me uncomfortable. They did not make similar sacrifices or meet me halfway. I disrespected myself by going along with it. Love makes you do crazy things. Story 105. He cheated in every relationship and had projection issues. Story 106. Constant lying, including false claims of pregnancies that ended under suspicious circumstances, and ultimately claiming to be divorced. Story 107. I nearly blacked out on the first date, which was not usual for me, so I thought it was just a silly hoopsie. Turned out that was a regular Tuesday for him. After more than a year of lies and cheating, I'm learning how much more peaceful being single and in therapy is than dating an alcoholic. Story 108. That she was married, laughing out loud. Do not worry, Reddit. It was an open marriage. Story 109. His last girlfriend had accused him of sexual harassment and assault. He said she was jealous. He told me the hysterical story about when he chased his babysitter around the house with a knife because she had said no. Unsurprisingly, the relationship was abusive in all directions. Story 110. She drove 11 hours to come to a Halloween party, and I had never met her in person. I had only met her playing Call of Duty and Left 4 Dead on Xbox Live. She was in my house for 5 minutes when we had some of the best sex I had ever had. Nobody should drive 11 hours for someone they do not know and have not met. She turned out to be the craziest woman I have ever known. The sex continued to be amazing every time, but I still have nightmares about how cruel and mean she was. That was 17 years ago. Story 111. She was really concerned that I would cheat on her. She cheated on me. Story 112. She had an underage ex she was still friends with. When we were together, she was 30 and he was 17. They had been together several years earlier. The first red flag that was not immediately obvious was that her family dog hated her. He was the only dog that did not like me by association. I suspect she treated the dog the way she eventually treated me, and that she received an assault charge for it. Story 113. A pattern of turning small issues into major arguments, twisting them to make me at fault, and never taking responsibility for her behavior. Story 114. Her apartment was a mess. She said it was that way because her mother was storing things there, so she could never fully unpack. After we moved in together, I realized she was a hoarder. Story 115. He said he used to be addicted to hard drugs. I didn't understand addiction well enough then. He's now extremely thin and still struggling with drugs. He blocked his mother, brother, and son after they raised it. I'd like to say it's no longer my responsibility, but we share a child, so it remains my concern. At least I won't be the person who finds his dead body. Story 116. I caught a man I was seeing before we were officially dating lying about wanting something serious. I told him off, and the next day he showed up at my house, so I forgave him. We dated for a year. He cheated on me throughout the relationship, laughing out loud, and was physically abusive. Story 117. To my knowledge, I was not cheated on, but who knows? The double standards were crazy. We both worked in bars and restaurants, and there were certain people she did not want me working with for no real reason other than her insecurity. She moved away for school and told me she did not want me bartending at all because it is easy for guys to get girls, but bartending was my career at the time. I wanted to move on anyway, so I also went to school and bartended full-time. After a while, she still did not want me bartending, but she got a job at a well-known restaurant in Canada called Moxie's, which hires on looks. When I said I was not opposed to her getting a job, but the double standards were insane. I could not bartend at a dive bar, but she could work with the most attractive people in the province. We argued quite a bit. Then she sort of flipped it on me, calling me controlling and even calling me abusive at one point, which I still cannot wrap my head around. I did not ask her not to work there. I just said it was crazy to restrict where or who I worked with while thinking it was okay for her. I broke things off and she kept messaging me for a long time, always trying to have the upper hand, and accused me of being verbally abusive and insecure so many times that I had to block her on everything. The worst part is I made a drunken mistake a few years ago, and we hooked up over the holidays while she was seeing somebody and I had no idea. They are married now with kids, but I have heard she mentioned that I was abusive a few times to acquaintances. It makes me want to be petty and try to ruin their marriage, but I will not involve myself. It is just so crazy. Story 118. Ignoring the fact that he did not want me, he only wanted someone to massage his ego and make him feel liked. Story 119. He was a writer working on a fantasy novel that was essentially a Lord of the Rings knockoff, but with characters that were dogs who spoke only Spanish. He was a wealthy white man from Florida. Story 120. The first time my body felt unsafe was when he got mad and screamed at me. I ignored my instincts that were shouting for me to run far away from the relationship. It grew worse toward the end. When someone raises their voice and you see nothing behind their eyes, listen to your body and get out of there. It is never a one-time thing. I am happy to say I left my abusive former partner. Only after therapy and years of learning to be alone did I meet my current boyfriend, and I have felt safe since. We have been together for 3 years, going on 4. Not once has my body screamed at me to run away when I am with him. Story 121. There were so many lies when I look back on everything. If one of his lies was revealed, he would yell at me and say it was my fault that he had lied. I never held him accountable because he claimed he had a bad childhood. I can't get those years of trying back. But I never settled again. Story 122. He could not communicate about problems. Every time I tried to talk openly, he avoided or dismissed it. For years later, he broke up with me because of problems. Some I had tried to solve with him, and others he had never mentioned. Story 123. Jealousy and possessiveness. She became dysregulated and upset when I went out with friends and texted me nonstop to come home and soothe her. Early in the relationship, she became upset when I saw an ex from over a decade ago who had since become a friend, even though I came to her house before and after and stayed in contact while I was with that friend. She also became upset when she thought someone was flirting with me at a bar. She expected me to dote on her and give her everything she wanted, but if I asked for a small favor, she would make a big deal of it. During sex, she always prioritized her own pleasure over mine. We are queer, and even when I explicitly asked for more, she did not reciprocate. She was cold to my friends and family and spoke negatively about them, and they would all ask me if she did not like them. Once we moved in together and the relationship became more established, she felt more secure and the behaviors eased somewhat. But they never went away. My resentment had been building without my realizing it until it came to a head. Story 124. His excessive jealousy made him accuse me. He would start fights, claiming I was cheating. Of course, I did not believe such nonsense, but I pretended not to notice because I loved him. I do not love him anymore. It is over. Story 125. My ex-boyfriend was a mama's boy. I was so blind that almost everything in our relationship was decided by his mother. Story 126. She had unpredictable, severe mood swings and physically attacked me. I received a warning very early on and should have left then, but live and learn. Story 127. Telling a half-truth by withholding details is essentially lying. Story 128. My ex was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which was a major issue. She also ghosted me on my birthday to go on a road trip with a male friend who clearly wanted to sleep with her. No note, no text, nothing. I came home and she was gone. We had planned a small dance performance at a club we frequented to celebrate my birthday, and she left me high and dry. When she returned 2 weeks later, she said that friend had raped her and that she needed a place to stay. I forgave her and believed her, but a similar pattern repeated 3 more times over our 9-year relationship. Only after the relationship ended did I realize she was probably lying about being raped. I loved her intensely. In many ways I still care, not romantically, and I feel genuinely sad when I hear she is struggling. I want her to find happiness and stability, even though I know she is preventing it. Story 129. He had previously been to prison for fighting and had 6 children with 4 different women. Story 130. We moved in together. He grabbed my arm to get my attention and told me I had better not be cheating on him with a guy friend I had in middle school. At first I noticed only a few small warning signs that later became a major one. I had to see the major sign to recognize the smaller ones. Story 131. When we visited Copenhagen and its famous district Christiania, there was a holiday or celebration. I do not remember exactly what it was, but a huge red flag flew in the central square, which I ignored. Story 132. When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Wanda, BoJack Horseman. Story 133. About 2 months into seeing each other, she came to my apartment unannounced with a large bag and stayed for 4 days. She would not leave and cried when I asked her to go a few times. She made a scene in public when I told her I was not ready to move in with her and gave me a list of names she wanted for our children. She was the most sexually aggressive person I have ever been with. It was amazing, but she was intense in everything else in her life. Story 134. They kept being mean to my dog. Over time I had enough. I tried my best, but I had to walk away. Story 135. When he admitted to me that women send him inappropriate pictures via Snapchat and Instagram all the time and he said he cannot help it because he is a public figure, I was laughing out loud. This was 2020, and he was a 34-year-old aspiring country rapper with a couple thousand Instagram followers. I can genuinely laugh about it now and see that my choices reflected how I felt about myself then. Lost, insecure, and willing to accept the bare minimum to have someone in my life. Feels like a fever dream, to be honest. I am not that person. I was never the type who needed a boyfriend, so my obsession with him was puzzling. Story 136. Most people in my town did not like him, including people who had worked with him and described him as unprofessional, rude, and aggressive. He said he did men's therapy once and thought they should all get over themselves. He complained about all his exes, especially the last one. I gave him a bit of sass and he became very offended. He dyed his hair. He is 55 and graying. I thought this was a sign of insecurity, and I turned out to be right. He became overly excited about me and ignored me when I said I was not in the right place for a relationship and had mental health problems. He told me about a homeless cat that came into his garden, meowed, and looked sad and wet, but he would not let it inside because he said it would make his house dirty. He is not allergic and he likes cats. This is just stuff from the very beginning. He became very verbally abusive. He told me I must know I was not beautiful and called me a hole, among other insults. He also pushed me violently out of bed. He never apologized unless I threatened to leave because of his behavior. Story 137. He unproductively criticized everything I did or did not do, was very defensive about receiving criticism himself, was never considerate of my feelings, made jokes at my expense, tried to control what I wore and who I spent time with, and said the N-word as a white man. I had very little self-respect at that time. Story 138. I found her call history and messages deleted every time I came home from work. and her profiles cleared on every social media platform. I enjoyed the comfort of being held and did not care about the anger and frustration building inside or the consequences it would bring. Story 139. Just how strong a supporter of Make America Great Again he was. We got together in 2014, so that was before Donald Trump announced his presidential campaign and before Make America Great Again emerged. In 2016, when it started happening, I remember thinking he would come to his senses eventually, but after 2 years it only got worse. I am ashamed to say I kept making excuses for him because I loved him, but looking back now I cannot believe I did that. He went against everything I believed in as a liberal. Story 140. When he casually mentioned that he was a gambling addict, I thought it was a joke, but it was not. He genuinely had a problem. He also struggled with pornography addiction. I refuse to be with anyone who struggles with addiction of any kind now. It will always be them over you. Story 141. He joked about my appearance as time went on. He was the same man who told me I was too beautiful at the beginning. Story 142. The hole he had punched in the wall when his ex-wife had ignored him. Story 143. He gaslit me and took advantage of my empathy by making me feel sorry for him because my family did not like him. He drank half a bottle of vodka in one sitting the night before our wedding. Story 144. Too much family. I felt like I had landed in a cult. Story 145. He kissed me when he was in a serious relationship with someone else. He became offended when I told him it made me lose respect for him. I thought he kissed me because it was true love because that is what he said. Turns out he was just a cheater. Story 146. My partner will not allow me to be in the company of the opposite sex. I joined a hiking group because I was feeling isolated. One can guess why. My partner said I would be on the next Dateline episode. Nice. Story 147. They gossip and badmouth me to their friends. They cannot make independent decisions and have to run everything through their counsel before getting back to me. Story 148. He became angry quickly at the slightest inconvenience. He never tried to calmly analyze a problem. He only shouted and grew so angry that, at some point, it was no longer us but only me who dealt with everything, because I preferred to do it alone rather than work with an angry man. Story 149. Someone who became annoyed quickly because I asked too many questions about their actions. Story 150. She told me explicitly that the love of her life was an older man who had disappeared. It was clear I was a second choice, but I was in lust. Story 151. He is on speaking terms with two of his closest friends who cheated on multiple women and tries to normalize that behavior by saying they were immature when they did it. As if being married suddenly makes them mature, laughing out loud. His friends have disrespected me on multiple occasions, yet he never took a stand. He is a compulsive liar. He lies all the time, whether the lies are big or small, and he lies to my face. Story 152. I bled nearly every time we were about to be intimate. I thought it was polycystic ovary syndrome, but my body was rejecting him from the start. The bleeding turned into repeated urinary tract infections and, when I left, a massive kidney infection. Story 153. I had to fight to get him to acknowledge my feelings. He would only apologize if he believed he was objectively morally wrong. It did not matter that my feelings were hurt if he thought they should not have been. Story 154. He could not handle money and dictated what I could wear. That did not last long. My cat did not like him either. Story 155. They told me I was not allowed to play video games and made me get rid of my personal computer. Story 156. I couldn't hold a job for more than a couple of months. I always blamed everyone else. Story 157. He was unemployed and did not finish high school. I have no idea how he paid his bills, and I do not want to know. I helped him obtain his general educational development certificate and a security job, so by the time I left him he was better off. Do not get me wrong. I work in construction, and hardly any tradespeople finished high school. They are not unintelligent. They are smart to enter a trade, become their own boss, and be in control of their futures. They may not know how to use Microsoft Excel, but they are hardworking people who help keep the economy moving, and I appreciate them. I will never again date someone who lacks the drive to improve. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.